Okay, I'd like to call to order the April 4th, 2018 special meeting of the Lexington Board of Directors. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
By way of announcements, the public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. For attendance, we have all board members in attendance with the exception of Mr. Navarrete, who is not here, and Mr. Ryan is on the phone, so we will do a roll call vote this evening. We have, it looks like, 2 items on our agenda, so at this time we'll take public comment on these board action items.
I don't know where you want me to stand.
You could even, I guess,
I'll just move over here out of the way so that I'm not blocking. I'm Diana Kernoff, the president of the Acton Education Association, and I'm here about your change to the calendar. The language that's been in the calendar and the practices that are associated with it have been in since Dr. Laird Warner. Dr. Warner, Dr. Evans, Dr. Kirk, Dr. Miller, Dr. Stevenson, Dr. Quinn, Dr. Miller, and Dr. Zerbe all worked with the language that's in the current contract surrounding when you may have snow days. The snow days are an issue that came into play with the school district because the school district with Dr. Warner removed all snow days. You ended up with a major problem because there were no snow days, and this was in the late 80s. And you had to figure out what you were going to do because they took 3 days out of the year that were just snow days. All the days were made up at the end. And the agreement ultimately was that we would make up the first 2 snow days at spring break. I appreciate that you talked to your solicitor. I'm sure that you didn't say to him that you didn't bring it up at bargaining. You did bring up starting before Labor Day with students. And you heard us when we talked about Easter Monday being a conflict because it's an administrative holiday and it's a work day for us. But we didn't resolve it. But nobody brought up Easter week. Nobody brought up changing the snow days. Also, and trust me, my people will love having those days off. That's not my point. My point is, if this was bargainable and you didn't bargain it, and now you want to make a change after the fact, and you're also adding 2 days to the year. So, thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the calendar also. My name is Joe Bickelman from Audubon. I don't think there should be any Act 80 days in the calendar. I think the students deserve 180 days of instruction, and I don't think taking Act 80 days, I think it detracts from the amount of instruction that they should receive. So I don't think there should be any Act 80 days in the calendar. Right.
Anyone else for public comment?
I'll just stand back here if that's okay. I'm going to talk about the contract. I was just wondering, I looked at the contract and I see 3%. I compare that to the teacher's contract at 4 and 5%. Who negotiated this then? Same negotiating team?
Some members are the same, some are different.
Why is that?
It was just the way that it was set up by the previous board.
So are these people like second-class citizens? Is that what the story is? They don't get the same treatment as the teachers? Is that what's going on? Why didn't we go with 3% for the teachers as opposed to 5%? Because this seems to be fiscally responsible. How come you didn't go with 3%? Any reason? How'd you pick 3% here? Any rationale?
We can try to address the questions when we get to that point in the agenda.
Well, this is the time to address it, because you're voting on it. I'm surprised you didn't tell me to go calculate it like you did with the green sheet. Remember the green sheet? Told me to calculate those percentages, because they're not here. I'm glad you put them on this sheet so we know, for a change. What's the total dollar figure for this contract, you know?
I believe that'll come up during the discussion tonight.
Well, can't I know now before you vote on it so I can comment?
Okay, total net increase is $293,737.97 across all 4 years.
All 4 years. How much is it for each year, do you know?
For 17-18, it's $145,174.74. 18-19, $82,820.71. 19-20, $57,288.71, and for the final 4th year in 2021, it's $8,453.80 for a total net increase of $293,737.97.
So why wouldn't you want to tell the public this one? Sounds to me like this was done fairly well when you listen to those numbers. Why couldn't you have done this with the teacher's contract? Then you wouldn't be laying teachers off and furloughing teachers. That's my question. How come you didn't go with 3% on the teacher's contract like you did here and ended up with those results? Last year, hardly any increase at all. What, 5,000 you said? What was it last year, 5,000?
It's about 8,000.
8,000.
Yeah, do you want
8,000 last year.
$8,400 approximately?
Right. Instead of what we got going with the teacher's contract.
Dr. Malik, could you please wrap up?
Sure. Who's representing these folks? Is it the PSEA representing these folks again or no? Do they have representation, like union representation?
MESPA is represented by PSEA, yes.
Okay. Did the people who were negotiating this take a contribution for us? I mean, people who were representing us in the negotiations take money from the PSEA? Do you know?
I can't speak to that.
I know because every one of you folks took money from the PSEA. So did board members negotiate the deal?
Current and previous board members.
Right. You all took money from the PSEA. So the answer to the question is yes. You know that.
Dr. Malik, your time is up.
Okay, thanks.
Any other public comment or board action items?
Sorry, if anyone's out there, there are seats here if you'd like.
So let's start with the Acton Educational Support Professional Association 4-year agreement. May I have a motion to approve the tentative agreement subject to administration and Labor Council's approval of the final wording of the document for MESPA? Can I have a second? Discussion?
I'd like to just make a comment. The motion is worded because there is a provision that is still outstanding in the MESPA agreement that ties back to the MEA language. So it basically says that whatever the language is in the MEA agreement, it will be in the MESPA agreement. That's why we can't provide a complete document for your review this evening. So what we did do is, aside from the presentation that we provided you at our last meeting, as well as the summary from the negotiations solicitor, we posted that online for the public to see. We did provide to the board I believe it's a second draft of the proposed agreement for your review. So the board is informed about what the agreement in principle will look like. It is still subject to some final wording, both and some clarification, both from the MESPA side as well as from the administration negotiating team side. Once that's finalized, negotiating council will provide a final document to the board to ensure that it does meet the intent of this vote this evening if it's so passed.
I know there was some questions raised about the percentages in these two agreements, and I will say that with any contract, there are many, many moving parts, so it does not come down to a straight percentage of increase. If it were that simple, I think we all agree that contract negotiations would not take the time and energy that they do. So it's important that we look at this as a contract in totality. It's not just about one particular line item in the contract.
My only comment is to thank the people that were involved since I was unable to be part of it. And there was a comment made by the public about this group being second-class citizens, and absolutely not. An imperative part of our staff, and I'm glad that we're here to vote on the contract.
I have a couple of questions, just for clarification purposes. This relates to the document that's attached to the agenda. First one is on Article 17. There's language at the end that says, in the event no paraprofessional is available, provided above, an additional $10 shall be paid. I'm not sure what that refers to. It's Article 17, where the 10 goes to 20.
Is it on page 3, Lorraine?
Page 3, yes.
Okay.
Dr. Sisnova?
Yeah, so the revised pay rate is moving from 25 to 35 a day for paraprofessionals who substitute for a teacher and have a teacher certification. That's
Right.
basically.
Understand that.
It's missing the last part of the addition to the contract on the summary for Ryan. If you pull up the full contract, it says, if I'm correct, in the event a paraprofessional is available to provide it as above, an additional 10 shall be paid, right? This is the sentence.
Yes.
And then it continues during the 17-18 school year, and $20 shall be paid starting in the 18-19 school year.
Correct.
It's not in the summary.
Right, so that summary does include all the entirety of the language.
All right.
So if you looked at the red line document that was sent out.
I think I listed there as well. So,
Okay.
great, got it, thanks. And by the dollar amounts, that was helpful, I got that. And then, there's really a question from Mr. Bricker, with regard to unused sick days that accumulate and carry forward, do you carry an accrual for that, you folks? I'll have to check on that. Okay, because I'm wondering if there's a catch-up that has to do with the increase in the rate. That is not too significant, but something to take a look at. That is all. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Let me ask a question, just because I'm unfamiliar, and recess aides are on here. I understand that with the weather, that we don't have outdoor recess. Do we still, how do we still pay recess aides on days that the children are not outside? Do we assign them different tasks within the school to do
Yeah,
during that time?
Yeah, we don't send them home. We do have to keep the kids home during that day. They're just directed to other assignments as decided upon by the principal.
Okay. Okay.
Can we vote then? All those in favor of?
Hold on,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
That's all right.
Go ahead.
Just two things, a clarification on page 12, the third column is labeled board's final proposal, whereas the rest of the document does say summary of tentative agreement. I just want to make sure that that's a misprint there, that there's nothing spelled.
No, that is a misprint. The document is as provided to us from council, negotiating council. So it is a misprint. It should continue to say summary of tentative agreement.
Okay. And just the final thing I'll say, very similar to what I had to say about the
all those in favor of approving the tentative agreement for MESPA, subject to administration and labor council's approval for the final wording of the document, we're going to do a roll call vote. So we'll start over here with you, Brian.
Yes.
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 Mike?
Yes.
Okay. So with a vote of 8-0, motion carries.
Congratulations.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the attached modified instructional calendar for the 2018-2019 school year? May I have a second? Discussion?
It should be known that in front of each board member, as well as there were some handouts on the table along with the printed agenda for this evening, that there are two documents that look very similar. However, one says 2018-19 school calendar draft, and the other one is absent of draft. The one absent of draft is the one that we approved at the last voting meeting of the board. And the one with draft includes a holiday on March 15th and on March 29th as the intent to use as the first two snow days of a school year in the event of a weather cancellation, where then all additional snow days would be added to the end of the school year. It should also be known that I've had great conversation at length with the leadership of the Acton Education Association on an annual basis. We meet and discuss the calendar. It's certainly not. It's not an easy task because every year, presents some challenges. However, we've always been able to certainly to work together. I did present to the board what I thought was, the agreed upon calendar between the association and the administration for the board's consideration. It is clear that from the last meeting that there were some members of the public who and maybe also members of the board that are challenged with how difficult it is to deal with setting up a holiday and then having to take days away prior to because of snow. A lot of districts do use snow makeup days, and kind of what's being proposed here in the draft is similar to what other districts might end up doing. I know that we had discussions with the Acton Education Association, or I had discussions with them regarding the language that exists in the current and will be the future signed agreement with the MEA. We shared that language with the solicitor. We've had the solicitor respond by indicating that the language so does allow, from his interpretation, that these snow days be added as indicated in the draft. I can tell you that part of the challenge may be, while we're trying to solve for a particular matter, I just think it's incumbent upon me to share with the board that we may be adding some additional challenges by doing this. And those challenges, quite simply, it's the belief of some that by adding more holidays, the issue of students not attending during the April holidays will be exacerbated to a greater degree because now there's two more holidays built into a schedule, theoretically. So that's one challenge. It's something you should consider when making the decision. And if that doesn't make sense, I'll certainly take questions on what that means and try to give you an explanation. Other than that, my concern is that certainly we've gotten advice from our solicitor, and we've certainly, I've read it myself, and it so does indicate it in my professional educated view that it does allow for this to occur. My only concern also is that if we go down this path and it is challenged through agreements, by the association and we lose at a certain time in the future, I'm not saying we will lose, I'm not saying we won't, we just never know when you get in front of an arbitrator or a hearing officer. If we were to lose, we'd then have to re-communicate back to the families that, you know, we have to go back to some other modification of the schedule, which is certainly fine. It's just a matter of timing. So if it happens too late in the year, it creates a challenge. And but if it happens, you know, sooner, like in September or October, it's not so big of a deal. But those are some things that, you know, I wanted to share with you so that you're aware of that. But in all fairness, you know, this is a tough decision, and one that you know will require some explanation from me to make sure that parents understand what we're doing now. So those that have lived in the community, have many students come through the schools. And this is a doc that I would, so long as the board's okay with it, communicate out about the start of the school year and talk about that. I'd communicate out about how these snow days would be made up and the plan for that, and any other adjustments. Remember, we made some minor adjustments to around the Thanksgiving break as well. So those would be the things that I would want to communicate out and a message to our families.
Couple questions, Dr. Zerni. The April 22nd, the Easter Monday, is that a MIAC day or is that a complete shutdown?
That is actually a complete shutdown, but is also used as the second MIAC, I believe.
Is it or isn't it? That's
It's usually the second MIAC, yes.
So that is this, as part of the discussion, was this a form of contention, was this Easter Monday that Ms. Fernappa already pointed out. So the 22nd in this calendar is a MIAC flex day number 3 or 2 or whatever it is.
Yes. So it generally means that the teachers that would have completed their hours in advance of that would generally have off. It should be known that the administrators and MESPA both have that as holidays, so Easter Monday.
So my recollection in this process, when the spirit of it was trying to figure out what to do with that Monday, and there's nothing that could, if that was the bone of contention with the MEA, I thought that if there was another particular point to put that in the flex schedule, from a flexible, that maybe the give that's needed to, for whatever reason, there's an issue related to the 2 days in March. So, just a comment there. Second question was the 17th of April there was no reduction in that. It was not as a school day. There was no consideration of making the 17th of April a school day, especially since the PSSA testing is being done that week.
There was no additional consideration given to that. I'm going to defer to Ms. Ricky, who helps me with this part of the calendar.
So we did not discuss April 17th being a regular school day. It was just kind of backing whether that would remain a makeup day for a snow day or a season of March days.
So historically, this calendar, as you see now, especially with this 17th and 18th of April and the 19th, reflect what historically has been in place as days off for students and for staff, so long as we did not have one or two snow days prior to those days.
Yeah.
So
which is the Wednesday.
Everything's consistent. So again, I'll just reflect. The things that aren't consistent with things in the past are the start. That's the next change was in November, where we moved the March in-service to allow for all students K through 12 to be off, which would mean that we'll have parent-teacher conferences for K through 8, and then we'll have in-service for 9 through 12 on the 21st of November. And so then the only other change to the draft that's in front of you is we added the 2 holidays, the 15th of March and the 29th of March. And they will then be the first 2 days that will be used if snow occurs before those 2 days. And that will then preserve the 17th and 18th as days that would definitely be off for staff and students. That's what this calendar does. Now, on the other side of this, we don't get snow. You know, and it's my understanding from the data that we collected, we've at least had 1 snow day prior to the April dates, and we've always had to use one as long back as we can go. I think it was 5 or 6 years we went back. So it's likely that we'll use one of those 2 days for sure. And this year, obviously, we would have used both if this was in play. So in the event that there is no snow, we would have students off and staff off on those 2 days. The administration and the secretarial staff, MESPA group would be in. Not all of them, but majority of them.
Okay, so that my concern was, I thought we had talked about taking the 17th off, I realized that but it seems choppy, and I'm not a PSSA testing card-carrying member, to be honest, but the reality is that it does seem to chop up that process really a lot in the next year, in 2019, so I got a concern there. The other question I had is completely random out of the, at one point I understood that a lot of the days are, since there's not really a 6-day cycle in the elementary school, there was concern about the specials and always having the same day off for the service, at least that's what my understanding was. So, but we do seem to be touching a lot of Fridays. Why do we take the 12th of October when there is Columbus Day on the 8th for parents that may have off on that day?
Yeah, so what we did, and what we normally do every year is we gather as part of the North Monco Technical Career Center schools, there's 5 schools, we share our calendars so that if there's a way to coordinate those days, it allows for the students at North Monco to attend, because otherwise we could be off.
That's why we
So what happens, we normally have the Monday off. That's what we've traditionally done, but more schools had the Friday off, and therefore our students wouldn't have gone on the 8th. They would technically missed a day. And for programs like cosmetology and others that are time-based and hour sensitive, we would burden our students.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Plus, it also gives us an opportunity to coordinate professional development with other districts, and we've done that in the past.
I think they're, in my opinion, I'm going to vote against the amendment of the calendar. I still think that we can come to an agreement, maybe fixing the Easter Monday as the trade-off.
So, to NEA's issue, the calendar that we voted on last week, or this calendar, they may agree because there's built-in snow days to either.
No.
Or no? Okay,
No.
that's where I'm,
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm suggesting that the one we did at our last voting meeting, I got agreement with the MEA that they were fine with this.
okay. And that,
The one I'm concerned about, that I raised that issue, is the one that has the snow days in, that Ms. Cornell had spoken to at the beginning of the meeting.
okay. I was personally fine with this calendar, but I also don't have strong opinions either way. I kind of believe with one of the members of the public. My kids go to school when they have school, and if I choose a vacation, I choose a vacation, or I miss for certain sporting events or illness. But I like the idea that we're building in some snow days because it seems to make sense. I also am comfortable with this because it doesn't need to be what everybody else does, but it seems to be the most norm for the future. And I don't know if this doesn't fit in with contract language, but what we do where I work is we build them in at the end of the year, and if they're not used, we don't use them. I think that goes against contract. I think that goes against language, so I do understand that's why we didn't do it. But we tack them on at the end, And then if we don't use them, we're like, yay, we're out early. And then this year we had to use and take off of spring break. And I did have some children out, and it was a shame. But I'm also tend to think what Paul feels about sticking with the calendar that we voted for last week. Because I just feel like these 2 days are kind of random. I mean, March is going to be long for every teacher and every student because there is no days off, but I just don't, like, if we don't have snow, then we have these two random Fridays off that not much I'm going to be able to do. Not that, that should matter, but March 15th and 29th. But that's just,
So, I'm sorry, that was during public comment, would have been the time.
I guess the only comment is you're implying that the one draft doesn't have snow days built in, and that's true.
I understand.
They're both built in.
So, I'm going to take some ownership for what we're looking at here, because this did come out of a meeting that I had with the superintendent, and I believe that the way that we've interpreted the contract language in the past could be incorrect, and that was where the conversation started. So, the drive to put the snow days in different places in the calendar, in part came from a conversation that I initiated. I think that it was a misinterpretation of the language, and I think that past practice does not need to dictate where we go in the future with this. Just because it's the way that it's always been interpreted doesn't mean that it was correct. Doesn't mean that it's the only way that it could be interpreted. One of the things that I hear is that this is something that could have been negotiated, and honestly, by the time I became closely involved in negotiations, the issues at hand were set. And again, I believe that this was a misinterpretation of existing language, so to my mind, this wasn't something that needed to be negotiated as part of the contract negotiations. Nor did I think that it was worth further muddying the waters with where we were in the process at that time, which is why we are where we are now. I know some people are hearing that this is about families and vacations, and I think that is misinterpreting my concern. I want our families to have some predictability to their calendar. I want them to know when they get the calendar at the beginning of the year, these are the days that you're going to have off. These are the days that if you are working parents, you need to worry about childcare for your children. If you have family that you'd like to go see for the holidays in the spring, these are the days that you can plan to travel to see family. It's not about vacation. It's not about families, taking a trip to Florida or whatever for spring break. I know plenty of families do. This, to me, is more about protecting the time off for the children, giving them the break that they need, and giving our families something that they can count on and be able to build their lives around so that their children can be in school. Attendance during those 2 days that we've taken back from spring break is historically lower. I think that having this revision will help with having more consistent attendance. I hear what Paul is saying about the PSSAs in the spring next year. I think that's an issue that's going to be facing a lot of districts in the Commonwealth because of where the Easter holiday falls, because of where schools traditionally take spring break, and because of where the testing window is. So I don't know that we're necessarily putting our students at any kind of a disadvantage or doing anything to negatively impact testing for them, especially considering that we're all in the same boat here. We're all looking at the same calendar. So that's where I stand. I firmly believe that this revision of the calendar is what's in the best interests of our families and our students, and I think our staff. I think that our staff deserve to be able to plan on when they're going to be. I think a lot of our staff are working parents as well. They need to know when they're going to be working, when they're not going to be working, and I think that this gives them a little bit more predictability in that regard.
What I think too is when I mix both of them together because we don't want to build more animosity between the history of what's been going on and understanding what the teachers want and what the community wants. And I come from just 7 years of feedback from the community that the calendar has been one of the more frustrating things within fact. And I've worked in 3 different school districts, and I've had the ability to see a set spring break, and I've seen the teachers being thrilled and looking forward to it. I see the kids, but I just see that it's, like you set the expectations, the students know it, the parents know it, the teachers know it. I don't think in any way that I would want to go against a contractor saying things and making us have to go into a discussion. That's not what my purpose is, but I do realize when you look at the time they're in school from February 19th all the way until the 17th, they're not off. And if we take those days, we are then now taking, it's almost going for about a good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. It's just so much time straight without preserving spring break. That's what I see first. So I kind of feel like March is a solid weekend, solid month. I think having those snow days in, built-in snow days makes sense. It's just a set. So, I do believe in the draft, but I do not want to cause rifts with the teachers in any sort of way. I mean, I respect what the teachers would like. I feel like I've talked to a lot of the teachers. I think they would approve that draft, but again, I don't want to create that. But I would like to start to lay the foundation that we should look at the calendar differently, and look at the wording differently. Even if it's just the beginning and we don't vote for it, I would like to at least look at spring break and preserving it.
So you're for, that's why we discussed. We
Right.
haven't had a chance to discuss it. So you would vote for this new draft?
I would vote for the snow draft, but I don't want to go against a discussion with the teachers. I'm not interested in that, to be honest. I'm just not. I'm interested in working together, and it's frustrating to constantly feel like we're fighting against this. So that's my frustration. We're just trying to preserve a spring break so that everybody would be.
I guess that's kind of where I'm at. I'm having a hard time understanding.
I'm having a hard time understanding why it would be against it to have built-in snow days. It's a long clip of time for both the staff and the students, and going right into PSSAs. Such a long, I don't like that the PSSAs are in the middle of spring break. That's just awful. But that's the way it is. But it's just a long clip.
But we also don't have to start PSSAs the 15th and 16th, as I understand it, and Ms. Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just the testing window is set by the state.
Yeah.
So we could choose to start PSSAs on, say, the 23rd or 24th.
We only have those 2 weeks to do ELA testing, so we have to do 3 days worth of testing in that 2-week window.
Okay.
And I would also and I imagine we could discuss it at education, or you could give us your thing. I know also the issue is makeup days. It's not just.
Right, we don't want to
those-
start at the
yeah,
end of the
yeah.
window because then we're.
And I don't want to belabor it, but there's also new, which we learned at the last education committee, there's new participation rates.
There's a reduction.
There-
Right.
There's
So
even
testing,
more.
yeah, there's a reduction of tests and time associated with testing.
So just I went back as you were talking to make sure that I read this properly. I'm not sure I did actually. But students' days lost, this is what's in the contract, or has been in the contract. This item was not changed in an addition. Student days lost as a result of the action of the district should be routinely rescheduled with one of the first 1 or 2 days such scheduled during the school year at the time of the adoption of the school calendar, using days from the spring break and/or other days previously scheduled as a non-student days, and remaining days rescheduled at the end of the officially adopted calendar. And then it goes on about talking about additional days. Certainly the and/or seems very clear to me. It doesn't say only, and past practice does not require. So I guess I'm more open towards the
And quite honest, I think if there was a compelling, I guess I have not heard a reason for why, other than I understand that there were previous administrations and boards that have not shown respect for the teachers, and that's why this language is in here. But I still believe that we're adhering to the language, and our solicitor supports that we're adhering to the language that's in here, and I honestly don't feel that our practice is, other than it going against what has previously been done, if we were to make this change to the calendar, I don't see how this is harmful to our families or to staff. Another point that I meant to bring up earlier, to Mr. Bickelman's point, that we shouldn't have Act 80 days, I think that our district is kind of walking a line like many districts are as to, you know, the balance between student instructional days when they're here versus the Act 80 days where our staff are doing important work to better our student body. So while the students aren't here for those Act 80 days, I do think that they are benefiting from those Act 80 days with the things that are being done. And I maybe it's a conversation that gets brought up at the education committee about, you know, how we use those Act 80 days, whether or not we're using them to the best of our abilities. I'm confident that we are, but I'd certainly be open to having that conversation in the education committee as well.
Kim, I just discovered an important typo on the calendar.
Okay, we have Mike comment. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just have one quick thing. Page 1 of the new draft has the changes on it, but I do want to make note that the back was not updated. The days that are listed there for March for the Fridays, they are not there. And last day of school, the time of last day of school is incorrect on the second page.
Right, so if we do approve this revision, we'll make sure that that back page gets updated accordingly.
Yep, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mike.
And I didn't know there was ever so much discussion about a calendar, so that's kind of why I'm like, I had no idea. And I appreciate hearing about that and your input, because I just work when I'm supposed to work, and but I get that I'm in the minority. What about, I mean, I'm not against either or whatever, but what about sticking with this and then trying to go towards the next year changing it, since we do have so many changes? And I really understand what, you know, what you're saying about I mean, this year was just so bizarre, and it is nice to have predictability, and it is nice to know you're not gonna lose spring break, and you don't have to worry about your kid. Predictability is nice, and those 2 extra days in March do look nice, because it is a long 10 weeks, but since I don't know, I just feel, I just had no idea this was such a bone of contention for anybody.
The calendar discussion usually goes to great lengths on an annual basis. The only other thing
Used to be for other reasons, but not to
Right,
us.
right. You know, another option that I can throw out to the board is that, and I haven't sought this yet, but if the board is inclined to really want these particular days, you can instruct me to have a conversation with the association about creating an MOU that will allow us to do this without risk of a grievance for 1 year. If that's what you want me to do, and then this is something I can bring back at another date if the association's interested in having that conversation. I don't want to put anybody on the spot right now, but that's.
I'm not gonna answer you right now either.
I think I feel like I maybe travel in the same circles as Ken Crow, that, you know, that the feedback I get is that, you know, having a solid spring break, especially after such an extensive time of going straight through, is beneficial to families. And I also think that, you know, there also has been a lot of feedback to me personally, as well as on social media, about starting before Labor Day. I feel like this is sort of a, you know, to kind of ameliorate the pre-Labor Day start pain that maybe people are kind of feeling, that, okay, well, then you get a solid spring break. And I like the idea of the predictability of, you know, being able to travel. It's not always vacation, but sometimes, you know, it's to visit family. It's, you know, it's important to do that. So I'm in favor of this draft calendar, but I also, you know, do honor and respect the MEA. So,
Okay,
feel like that's the problem. I feel like I would prefer the draft, but I do not want a grievance. I don't want a grievance, I don't want the against that.
So if that's the
So
challenge.
that's the
then-
case,
then
you know, I don't want to deal with it.
If that's the challenge, then I would recommend that you direct me to solicit from the MEA an MOU that would last for 1 year, that would provide a way for us to potentially do this without threat of grievance. It's one thing I can ask for. I'm not sure.
So we have table the vote then?
Or you just, you know, we just lay the foundation that this is something we're interested in for next year. We have a conversation with them throughout this year and let them know this is for next year. We want to preserve.
Honestly, I think that if we were to go that route, we would just be having this conversation again a year from now.
I would just add, I think the language that Mr. Winter's read from the contract is pretty clear to me. You have the option. So I'd say press on.
If I could jump in, I gave the opinion that I agree with you. And I think there were some comments here before that we're changing the interpretation of the contract. I don't think we are. I think we're just reading the language that's there. So there wasn't anything to negotiate here. This was negotiated a long time ago. This language is in here, and you're following that language, if you want to go that route. So, here, do anything you want.
Can I have your name and write that down so that I can quote you?
Sure.
So, are there further comments, or are we ready to move to a vote?
I don't look, I mean, I don't want agreements, and I don't see, I don't want anybody upset. I don't think we're breaking the contract. I don't understand this view of disrespect, and, you know, I have to say it, I just still don't understand it, unless I'm missing something. Because I feel like there's so much in that contract that respects teachers and respects education. I really, really do. And I still want this idea of where we don't respect, and I don't want to get into it. I'd be happy to have a conversation with people. I can give you a list of disrespect. I can give you a very long list of disrespect, of other districts, huge. So that's, even though I don't want anybody that's part of MEA unhappy, I don't look at it as that as much as just the right thing for the calendar. But I just want to abstain because I didn't even know that this was an issue. It's very difficult for me. I'm so sorry. Anyway.
So I'm gonna support this, the draft version, but I do think Dr. Turvey should try to find something to do with the 22nd. With the spirit of the contract, the spirit of negotiation, that was the issue that didn't get resolved. I don't know what we can do about it, if there's a memorandum of understanding around that, about what happens on that next day when it's a closed door after that issue that's under everybody's skin. So I think the best thing for the community is to vote these draft days, these snow days in as defined in the draft, and firmly put in the 17, 18, 19. But the 22nd is the one, I think, that if I was sitting on the other side, having concern about if that was not going to resolve. But I'm for the 22nd.
Okay, I think we've had our discussion. You ready to say something, Mary?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, well then, with that, let's take a roll call vote, and Jen, we're gonna start with you this time. So, all those in favor of approving the attached modified instructional calendar for the 18-19 school year? So Jen?
For the draft?
For the draft, yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes 7-1. This time I'll open it up to courtesy of the court.
Joe Bickelman from Audubon. When you come to all the meetings for the past 14 years, you can really learn a lot, connect a lot of dots. This has to do with the salaries that were given out for the teachers, 3.99%, the 4.9%, and I think the last year was 2.9%. I think I saw financial projections that projected deficits of 2.6 million, I think, in the 1920 school year, plus deficits going out. You talked about special ed expenditures going up, and mainly that was for some judgments that were awarded against the district. Hopefully that wasn't for clerical errors, or not signing, or not dating, or not doing the proper IEP. Hopefully it was justified. You have retirement costs that I hear, the retirement cost, the employer share retirement costs going up. I hear that that's a big problem, but it's not so much a problem for the mandated rates that the retirement system is putting on the district anymore. It's basically for unnecessary salary increases, applying those percentages to the salary increases that went up. Because you had the steep increases and it's basically almost level as far as the mandated rates go from the employers, from PSERS putting on the employers. The Act 1 index is 2.4%. That's based on state average weekly wages for the most part, and a cost index dealing with expenditures for education. And the CPI is below the 2.4% for the Philadelphia area. And you gave away raises of 3.99% to the teachers, 4.9%, I believe 2.9% in the third year. Each percent over, say, a 3% raise is about $450,000 that you didn't need to spend. Okay, so the first year is $450,000. That's, you didn't spend that, you didn't have to spend that if you gave a 3% raise. The next year is probably $900,000. And the last year, let's just say, you know, that's a decent increase, 2.9% is legitimate. So those things compounded over the 3 years, you probably have almost $2 million that you didn't need to spend, okay, giving those kind of raises. You got rid of the bus drivers, you got rid of the food service people, closed the building, and now you're giving this all away, and you have about $100 million in capital projects from that report that you're going to need to borrow for, okay? So giving away this money is just unheard of. You got more money from the teachers for the employee share of benefits, but you also gave them a raise to pay for it. My wife, an outsourced bus driver, didn't have that luxury, okay? So I just think the raises are out of hand, out of hand. I'm not making any of this up. I've been here, I sat at the meetings. Okay, regarding Mr. Earnshaw's comment about compensated absences, at June 30th every year, you have to put on the books the unpaid vacation days, the value of unpaid vacation days, the value of unpaid sick days and personal days, and it has to be done by employee, and you have to put that value on the books. So this does create a charge to net assets or whatever. You want to go visit families? You want to go do a vacation? You should try to work around 2.5 months in the summer that you have off. You have off 2.5 months in the summer. That's 10 weeks to go visit family. Okay, regarding that. You know, you can't fit it in unless it's at Easter or Passover or the holiday. One more comment. As far as the Act 80 days, I would add work days for the teachers. Just work days to learn more about their craft. Not pay more for work days, but get rid of the Act 80 days. And say, negotiate one more day a year for the next 4 or 5 years. And have those be the in-service days for them to improve their craft as far as that goes. Thank you.
Diana Kurnoff, co-president of the association. I just want to make sure that we're all clear that you did have built-in snow days in the draft that you passed last week. Those snow days that were built in that nobody wanted to acknowledge were the Wednesday and Thursday of spring break. I would like you maybe to do a study and see the absenteeism. You needed to start before Labor Day because we had to go with Northmont Co. And we did. And we're very concerned about aligning with Northmont Co. to see that they get their education. I'd like you to tally how many days kids are out for vacations and how much all of the staff needs to make up to get that education continuing and make up all that work. You've now added 2 more days to the calendar in March that you're already talking about being off and having a holiday. In the 41 years I've worked here, there's more snow than there's not. Those 2 days are going to be gone, but the parents are going to plan long weekends around those days. And those kids are going to be out of school anyway. Thank you.
Last week you voted on the administrative summer projects, and that document had 2 parts. First part was projects at the different buildings for $199,000, and the document that was voted on also had 3 extra facilities projects that were not discussed by the committees. Those projects are a delivery truck for $85,000, ride-on floor scrubbers for $50,000, box and lift installed for $25,000. So there are 4 projects, and shelving and storage solutions for $40,000, totaling up another $200,000. So I'm not saying those things aren't needed, but they're kind of slipped in, and I'm not sure how many people know about them. And as for the ride-on floor scrubbers, is that for 1 or 10 or 20?
Location.
And the locations, so it's just like, it's, I don't think there was I think there was totally inadequate defense of those things that got voted on. So I think...
I'd like to make a comment about that if I could. I don't want to take any time away from the person on the floor. It was determined following the meeting that those items that were listed at the bottom were not the items for which we intended to have the board vote on. They were only to vote on the listed projects that totaled the $200,000 that's typically set aside in the budget for the administrative projects. So that was planned for communication to the board in this Friday's memo. But you brought the issue up, and I recognize that, shared that with facilities and with the business manager, and we're going to make that notation. But it's on record, because we have it on video this evening, that it's only the projects listed for the $200,000. Just to be clear.
Just to be clear, who brought that issue up?
Who tonight?
John Andrews brought that issue up.
Okay, and at the prior board meeting, that would be board member Mr. Ryan pointing that out.
Okay.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I knew.
Okay, well,
I knew I wasn't.
all right, well, I think that's been clarified. The other thing is that on the buildings list, it mentions the high school driving simulators, and again, it doesn't say how many would be purchased or how many are needed, or how many. So I think, it comes across as things are obfuscated, and maybe that's not the intent.
Mr. Andrews, I do believe that we did have that information about the driving simulators. I apologize, I don't have those notes from that meeting in front of me, but I do recall that was...
We discussed it in public meetings, at least on 2 occasions. However, Mr. Andrews is correct, it's not listed on the document for which he's referring to.
Okay.
Because we don't have all the quotes yet for the simulator, so we're trying to get as many as possible. So for your information, there are typically 8 used. Right now there's only 3 in use. The rest of them are non-usable. We believe that we can get between 4 and 5 for the amount of money we put in there, but it's still a negotiation process.
the last item that I wanted to talk to is board members voting on the MEA contract that with spouses that are teachers here. And the Ethics Commission seems to indicate that board members are allowed to vote. But interestingly, in today's Times Herald, there's an opinion piece about Judge O'Neill and in the Cosby case, and the defense is arguing that where his wife is a domestic abuse counselor, that according to the rules for judges in the Commonwealth, that he should recuse himself, and apparently in the rules for judges, it says judge knows that his spouse has more than a de minimis interest that could be affected by the proceeding. So, I think this difference of opinion between the Ethics Commission and whoever sets the rules for judges disqualifying themselves. So it's a sensitive area where I think that to avoid any possible conflict of interest, there were directors who should have abstained from voting on that contract.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Anyone else prepared to say the floor?
Jim Rock, Worcester. I'm having trouble with this phobia about offending the teachers. I'm not sure I understand it, for a bunch of reasons. Number one, you guys are worried about your interpretation of the calendar issue. Well, that's why you have a solicitor sitting here. If you're worried about your, the interpretation and some kind of a grievance being filed, just ask your solicitor. And if you guys are right, then don't worry about it. If you're doing everything right, then just do the right thing. I don't get it. What's all the worry about? If you do the right thing for the parents, the right thing for the kids, then don't worry about it. Secondly, why are they going to be upset with you? You just gave away the store with the contract. Just gave them the Christmas, birthday, anniversary present of the year. 4%, 5%, 3%. Why are they going to be mad at you? Right? Hey, don't worry about it. They're not going to. They love you. Well, that's the way I look at it. And see, they love you. And also they contributed to your campaign. And PSEA put up $2,500 to your campaign. So what are you worried about? Don't worry about it. They're on your side. You guys are like partners. So don't worry about it. Now, at the last meeting, Mr. Ryan makes this statement. Our teachers are completely underpaid. I don't know where he gets that one. I got the salary list from last year. You got 99 teachers making 100 grand. 100 grand. Plus 50 in bennies. Plus tenure, plus Peasers. Now how are you underpaid making 100 grand, plus 50, plus tenure, plus Peasers? Where does he come up with that statement? He made the right decision, resigning from the Finance Committee. I don't know how you make that statement as being chair of the Finance Committee. Doesn't make any sense. Now, of course, he's willing to give away the store because he's got 2 kids in school, costing us 44 grand, and he's paying $54.85 in property taxes.
Dr. Malcolm, I'm going to stop you right there. Where are you getting this information from?
Well, he's got 2 kids in school.
Right.
Right?
I'm concerned
20.
that this is getting a little bit personal, so I'd
Well,
like to know where you're getting the information from.
Well, what's it cost per student to educate a student
I'm
here?
not worried about that information. That's public information.
Right.
I'm concerned about where
So
you're
is
getting
so are
information
your
on this
property
from.
tax records the public information.
Public information.
I'm
You
not really concerned
you just
about
go
the
you just go
personal information.
you just go
I'm concerned
you
about
just
the
go
bullying.
you
You
just
are
go
a bully.
you just go down to moncopa.org. The reason it's important,
So you're pulling it from the website?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the reason it's important is because you guys are being subsidized by the taxpayer. For instance, all of you guys together at 22 grand a kid are costing us $418,000. But you're only paying $68,000 in property taxes. That's a shortfall of $350,000. That's why we're in a hole. That accounts for 10% of what we have to make up this year.
Dr. Mullen, please wrap up.
Yeah, yeah.
How much am I paying in taxes?
You? Let's see.
I just did my taxes, you put mine
Yeah,
up there
mine
too.
just got reassessed.
40
Mine's up a little bit.
40,
You got your numbers
48,
off.
48.31.
Yeah, my number, your numbers are off.
48.31. Well, basically, I wasn't lucky enough to get my house for $1. Okay? You were. So I wouldn't sit up there and be cocky about it. Okay? The point is,
My point
the point is,
you know how much taxes.
the point is,
How much taxes do you pay, Jim?
13 grand.
Okay.
13 grand. And I've never had a kid at Methacton. And the point is, it takes 30 of me to support your kids here at Methacton.
But no, wait,
No,
Kim,
it takes 30 of me.
1 second, Kim.
It takes 30 of
Public
me.
education is not, that is, do you believe in public education?
I believe in public education.
What it
But what
is,
I
think
don't
it's tuition.
condone,
That's not what we.
what I don't condone are arrogant people like yourself
Okay,
who
that's
sit
enough,
there,
Dr. Malik. That's
who
getting-
sit there and condescend to
You're out
people
of
like
line.
me.
You are out of line, Dr. Malik. Please wrap up.
Okay, if you're going to have people engage me, I'll engage them
And
any
I've
day of
asked you
the
not
any
to,
day of the
and I've asked
week.
you to please stop. You've
Sure.
exceeded your time.
Sure,
Please
sure.
yield.
I'm illustrating why we have a budget deficit here at the school.
Is there anyone else who has any comments for
Thank
courtesy of the floor?
Thank you.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn? Second? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, before we adjourn, go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted clarification there because the lack of a microphone up in the back of the room. I just wanted to clarify some of the things that Mr. Mullen said. He obtained the information about the property taxes for myself from where?
MoncoPA.org, is that
Board of
correct?
Assessments.
And the Board of
Yep.
Assessments, yes.
Yep.
The Board of Assessments. And then how many children did he attribute to me? Is it just with the two that I have in the district or?
Yes.
Okay. And was I don't know if this is part of the same part of the conversation, but he mentioned totals there, so I'm assuming that he counted the same number of children for all board members in the district?
Well, from what I got from the website as to how many you have, from your Methacton website.
From our Methacton website. Okay, thank you. And then so all of the totals for the property taxes, not just for myself, but for all 9 board members.
Correct.
Were obtained from that website added together.
Correct.
He's saying correct, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all.
You can do the math too if you'd like.
We have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
We did, yes. Okay, all those in favor, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.